I want it to go live for a second, give people a little bit, and then I'll let you know.
Okay.
That makes sense. Do you know how many we go down? Like right now, we were 18 before.
You have to let the system reboot for a second, so it'll be another minute before we actually go back.
I'm just watching our viewership to make sure a couple more people get logged back on. Okay.
Just give me the sign.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor, will you gavel and call us back in session?
You're now back in session.
For the record, all those previously stated during roll call and quorum are returned in quorum. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Comment from public. Next is John Stein Duval. Is that right?
Close, Mayor. I think you told me that was my last name last time we saw each other. It's John Stein-Hubel. Nice to see you again,
You too.
Honorable Mayor.
You too.
Esteemed Aldermen, especially Pam. Nice to see you again too. And it looks like both of mine knew I was going to speak, so they decided not to show. But they've heard me way too many times in the past. I do live at 13552 Weston Park Drive. I actually moved to this town in 1968 with my family. I moved out of state, Chicago, Northeast Ohio, came back, also lived in Chesterfield for a few years, but the call of town and country was strong. I moved back 4 years ago. Not only do we pay taxes in town and country, we also eat in town and country. We shop in town and country. My daughter attends a Catholic school in town and country. I had 2 children that work in town and country, and a daughter that hangs out at the Starbucks in town and country. So we are town and countryans through and through, and our tax dollars, we express that in the way we spend our money in our tax dollars. I would like to just make a note. Oh, wow. Should I start over?
Nope, you're good. Keep
Should I
going.
start over? That was wow all of a sudden. That scared me, Tricia. Like, I'm trying to channel my inner Tricia. It's not working that well. But I did want to make a few comments, but I do have a few prepared, and I promised to stay in my 3 minutes. But like the mayor said, I did take some of the rhetoric that was spoken to by one of the opposing lawyers, somewhat offensive. I don't think any of our residents who work very hard to get here call our houses mansions, nor do we try to cast aside any seniors. And I take great offense to that. And I would like, if they've done any study, it would show what % of seniors in St. Louis County can afford a $500,000 entry fee, as well as $5,000 a month in maintenance. Very few St. Louis County seniors. So don't tell me I'm casting seniors out of the community. I find that offensive. Secondly, I have a mother that lives in a beautiful facility called Willows. Luckily, it's in Chesterfield, not in town and country, this one, but it's beautiful. Her and my father lived there for 5 years before my father passed away. She still lives there. I go there about 3 times a week. My mom can still drive, but it is a self-contained community. The idea that she goes out and spends money in the community is laughable, right? She gets her hair done, she gets massages, she eats, she does everything in a bubble. That bubble could be in Wentzville, but because she wants to live close to me and my family, it's 5 minutes away. But there's no interaction, so the idea that they would spend money on our dining facilities and our grocery stores, I think is pretty far-fetched. I will also say that even though it is not a skilled facility, it's senior living, at least once a week, there's an ambulance parked out front. I would also say, and this is again in rebuttal to some of the comments I heard, I knew an alderman at the time of our second expansion as a city. His name was Joe Morrow. I'm talking late 80s, early 90s. And at the time, commercial development in town and country, as was proposed to the residents, was going to be limited to these wonderful little low-rise office buildings along the highway, where they were going to spend their money on our dining facilities and shopping in the city and go home at night. They weren't going to be here. They weren't going to be nighttime residents. They weren't going to use our emergency services. It was business and mental health. Oh gosh. Okay, well, Tricia, here I go. I'm going to bring out her human. As a town and country resident and taxpayer, I'd like to point out that the cost impact and tax implications of Mason Point proposed expansion. Town and country continues to tell us residents that our budgets are managed well, but costs are rising. And we all know that on the plate in a couple of years might be a property tax. The proposed development materially expands the Mason Point residential population without commensurate cost mitigation for the community. That means all of us current taxpayers in Town and Country are gonna have to pay more. Lutheran Services is a nonprofit and does not contribute directly to the tax base for Town and Country beyond mitigation fee, which any entity has to pay when they build a structure in Town and Country. As residents and taxpayers, we bear the cost of the necessary public safety services. This is just one example where our taxes will be increased due to the increased population with the Mason Point expansion. Because of this expansion, we may also experience higher property taxes, and for these reasons, I do not support this expansion. Additionally, I would like to point out that approving this development is only going to further the private interest of Mason Point. This expansion will have no benefit to Town and Country and its residents. I have lived through 2 annexations in Town and Country, and each time our government has promised to keep the country in Town and Country. I would ask you to please keep that promise this time. Thank you for your time.
John, thanks for your comments. The only other comment I would make, just so we're really clear, everybody knows this, we all pay taxes, but nobody in this room pays a property tax to the city of Town and Country.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, and believe me, if you come to our Board of Aldermen meetings, you know that we came very close to having one for last year. We're running a deficit and it cannot go on, but it's another night. Rachel Parker Seeley.
Hello, Mayor and Alder people. Is that part order? I'm not so good with it. Okay, we were gonna go with Alder women, Aldermen. We'll go with that. My name is Rachel Seeley. I live at 816 Masonwood Drive. I've had the great good pleasure to live there for 8 years. And in fact, when I relocated to St. Louis, my husband and I chose this area and in fact this street due to the charm of Town and Country, much of which has been celebrated in the conversations here. But in the 8 years I've lived here, this is not the first time we've gone through the Women's Senior Service expansion. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be the last if history is a preamble. I was here in 2017 when Lutheran Senior Services said it would not expand in the future. Now, a scant 2 years after they finished their last development, they're back here asking to do it again. We, the neighbors, recently met with Mason Point's executive director. When we asked them whether this expansion would be the last, the executive director would not make any commitment that this will in fact be the final expansion. Lutheran Senior Services' proposed expansion is based on its current need to address the wait list on independent living, something that benefits them from a profitability perspective. How long will it really be before their needs change again? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? If this expansion is approved, it will set a precedent. Lutheran Senior Services will be back for another 100,000 square foot expansion or a 5-story building to request to meet its quote-unquote current needs. How do we put an end to this cycle? I ask that we do it now. No more broken promises, no more expansions. Listen to the people of the community, and we ask you to vote against this expansion. Please vote. Thank you. I'll see the rest of the meeting.
Royce Scott.
Good evening, and thank you for the privilege of speaking to you. My name is Royce Scott. I live at 13198 South Outer 40, there at Mason Point in Unit 314. My wife and I started in 2018 trying to decide what we were going to need long-term, 5 years, 10 years, 15, however many. I was 81 and a half at the time. I'll be 87 in October. We looked through the greater St. Louis area at facilities like Mason Point, Marieville. We looked in the Columbus, Ohio area where our daughter lives, and And having seen a lot of facilities, there was no question in our mind that Mason Point was the right choice for us. We've not been disappointed with our choice. We continue to recommend Mason Point to our friends and associates. When I talk about Mason Point, I tend to talk about it in the context of people. There are people, and then there are real people. There are people who do what they do for whatever they do it. Real people are looking to do the right thing at the right time to provide the support and service that is needed. Mason Point is absolutely staffed with real people. As the proposed expansion, it'll continue Mason Point as a premier facility in the St. Louis area and in town and country. In thinking about this expansion and about the relationship to the neighbors, there were 4 things that came to mind for me, all of which have been spoken to. Night lighting on the new structure, trees being removed, impact on wildlife, and traffic issues, if there are any. In the case of lighting, my perspective is that it's kind of a wash. You got a building there up on the knoll that's lighted now. The new building will be a shade higher, it'll be lighted, and I would expect the light level to be about the same. In the case of trees, certainly I would not want to see huge trees taken out. If that has to be done, it has to be done. But trees are going to be coming back, more trees coming in the replacement landscape and the additional landscape and what presently exists. In the case of wildlife, we've been in Mason Point now for a little over 2 years. I've seen 2 deer and 1 fawn on the property. I see Mason Point as a developed site with essentially no wildlife. Over the hill and in the neighborhood, town and country probably has its share of deer. I hear folks talking about here in town and country with some regularity. But I don't see any impact on wildlife as a result of the expansion. As opposed, looking at the traffic, our unit is on the extreme west end. And out of the window of my desk, I can see the entrance to Fairfield. I can see the entrance 1 to Mason Point. I can see South Outer 40. I can see the exit from the interstate onto South Outer 40, and I can see the interstate. I'm here to tell you that the amount of traffic, if any, that gets added by this expansion is incidental to the amount of traffic that's already there. It's not an issue. We get 1 parking space. Most people have 1 car. There are some that have 2. If you have a second car, it has to go out on a service lot. There are a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, there are a number of people within Mason Point that have no car at all. And the same would be true with the expanded facility. I've kind of been through this before. I was the facility director for Monsanto when Monsanto built the research center in Chesterfield. I know what you're going through. I was on the other side, just like now, but I know what the Board of Aldermen has to think their way through. I know you have a commitment to do the right thing, and you can only vote your conscience when you vote. I do recommend that the expansion be approved. It will add to the facility and add to the capability of Mason Point. I have one more thing that I'd say that's not in the text that I prepared. We talked about numbers tonight. My wife and I have $452,000 invested in Unit 314. When I die and when she dies, our family will get 95% of that back. It's a long-term investment. If I run out of money for whatever reason, Lutheran Senior Services, who's been in this business since 1858, will pick up my bill if I ran on money. It'll come out of the benevolent fund, and I don't get kicked out. It's a capability that we did not find in most other places at which we looked. And with that, I'll conclude. If you have questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for your time. Thank you. And I know you're a doctor, so I think you'll be around for a while. Next is Michael Miner.
Hello, my name is Michael Miner. I live at 865 Mason Ridge Road and own another parcel at 857 Mason Ridge Road.
Welcome.
So hopefully, thank you. I hope I get two 3-minute segments. If not, I will talk fast. The home I own is the Frank Lloyd Wright Design Pappas House, which I bought in 2020.
Okay.
We've been restoring the home for the last 3 years. I just drove 20 hours to come to this meeting. I'll be going back probably in a week afterwards. I have some meetings that I organized to be here. I only found out about this project 6 weeks ago. It was literally got dumped in my lap. I had no idea that there was such a ruckus about to happen. But I started getting calls from my neighbors, and this is my problem, is I didn't expect to buy a house that I was coming to restore, having neighbor fighting against each other, which is kind of what's happening here. Because besides friends, neighbors are the most important thing that you could possibly have. My neighbor Rebecca, who is here somewhere, has been instrumental in saving our bacon when we were in Florida during the off season. And while we were here doing restoration work during the warmer months, our neighbors back in Florida have been extraordinarily helpful. We have a disaster every time. A pipe bursts, something collapses, et cetera, et cetera. So neighbors are very important. And so I'm torn badly because of this situation. I wish you guys didn't. We want to do this building for reasons I'm now going to explain. When we bought the Pappas house, we inadvertently bought a parcel of land underneath that we didn't know about. We thought it was a typo. It actually turned out that we bought a piece of land undeveloped. We probably have more land that borders Mason Point than any other, but we're also probably the least affected by this project, the current project. We want to build on that land a building designed by Frank Lloyd Wright's last living apprentice, who's 82 years old. His name is Arthur Dyson. Please, everybody, write that down. Look him up. He has his own Wikipedia page. He wants to do this project, and we can't get him to do it. But he's 82, so, time is not on our side. Your guys doing your building is really just stirring things up for me, because if there is negativity towards your project, then it's gonna spill over on ours, and we need your cooperation because we need a preservation easement, or an easement of some of the land that you own, or we need you to sell us the little bit of land that would give us access from the freeway off ramp, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very torn. However, when push comes to shove, I only think of one thing, and that is the word was given years ago that they would not build any further than they had. And as far as I'm concerned, this meeting shouldn't be taking place, and the previous meeting should not have taken place. They gave their word, and that, to me, should be the end of it. Other people have gone into the details as to why. I'm not affected by that, but I do believe I'm old-fashioned enough in giving your word and standing by it. I also talked to Drew, who is the chairman of the board, or I'm not sure exactly what he is, and recommended. They are a big corporation. They're not the traditional, I always thought it was just a Lutheran church looking out for their senior members and having, you know, a place for them to live, which is a very noble thing. But they are multi-million-dollar organization, and I just said, you know, I think the answer to this is buy a cheap piece of land out in Maryland Heights and just build another facility, because you are trying to cram too much into what is a space that is not fit for that. And again, you haven't given your word. That's really what it kind of boils down to. Now, I wish the select term was turning the other way, because I'm really talking to you people more than I'm talking to the board. I have not announced until just now this plan that we have for pursuing this Arthur Design building. What I want it to be is a fine arts center. I want to turn the Pappas House along with the Fine Arts Center and a small artist residence cottage into an artist community. Something that will have a retail store and itself will be a tourist attraction. I know you guys have some.
Yeah, it's a point of order.
All right.
You gotta stay on the topic. Please, and your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. The point being that please talk to me after the meeting if you want, as business cards, if you want to talk about that. Obviously, this will be a topic for future talk, you know, presentation, but as long as I got you here, you know. I want to do that.
Thank you.
Also, if anybody, any of you know, last thing, of a developer that is not a sociopath, I would appreciate you letting me know. I would like one with integrity.
We have a lot of other speakers.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Nita, Missy.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us speak. My name is Nita Missy, and my address is 13198 South Outer 40 Road, Unit 330. I live in Mason Point. My husband and I and our children moved to Chesterfield in 1976. So when we moved here, this was still a very rural area. There were a lot of horse farms, and the development along 40 hadn't developed yet. The valley didn't exist. Thank you. When we went to our church, which was still a little country church, there were more funerals than there were more baptisms than there were funerals. That has all changed. Now there are more funerals than there are baptisms. Our community is getting older, just as I have aged, so has our community. When we first got here, there were only young families moving in. Now those families, like us, have aged. So when my husband and I were in our 80s, are in our 80s yet, we kind of saw the future in that he already had middle stage Alzheimer's, and we knew that there was going to be a time when one or the other of us was going to have extra care. I looked at several places, but when Mason Point was being built, we signed up before they had even dug ground, because it was in what we considered our community. We consider Chesterfield and Town and Country as neighbors, and that still was our community. We were still able to get to our doctors, our hospitals, everything was right there. And it just doesn't seem right that as we age, we should have to leave our community just because of getting older. We wanted to stay where we had lived for almost 50 years. So Mason Point was a good solution for us. The one thing that they had that made it a done deal is that they had advanced help when we were going to need it. When we moved into Mason Point, my husband and I both moved into our unit. It was less than a year, slightly less than a year, when he had advanced so much, plus had added Parkinson's to his diagnoses, that he had to move over to what we call the other side, not that other side, the other side of the building. And the advantage to that is that I could still see him whenever I wanted to. I could see that he was well taken care of. I can spend as many hours a day there as I want. I don't have to worry about rain and snow and driving at night. He's there, he's still near me. When he had to move out, it was a very difficult time in my life. So I have the ability to still be involved with his care. And that was premium to me. There are a lot of support groups at Mason Point, one of which I'm very involved with, and it's for caregivers who are going through the same situation we did. It gives me purpose and a way to share my experiences with other people who live there who are going through the same thing. The point is that having options for living seem to have to change as the community changes. And there are a lot of young people here tonight. They're gonna get old too, just like we did. We were young when we moved to Chesterfield. Here we are, this many years later. So I just hope that it isn't necessary for people to leave just because they're older. This is a wonderful place to live and we're happy here.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Alan Markle.
I am Alan Markford. I live at 1228 Sakara Court. I think there's reasonable demand for this facility as indicated by the wait list for occupancy. I don't believe that the demand for emergency services will increase materially, perhaps not at all, given that this project is leaning in the direction of independent living, which is where that stuff is less frequent. I believe there have been major shifts towards independent living since the pandemic. I have two parents that were living in independent living. They did not want to move to assisted. They brought care into the home, so I support that, and I believe that the pandemic changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And so I think it's a little naive to think that somebody that said something before the pandemic to hold them to that in perpetuity is not realistic. This is a commercial zone, and
Do they all have COVID?
this is a,
Just get the speaker.
this is a commercial zone, it's a commercial enterprise. Yes, it's run by a nonprofit, but business models change. And I think reasonable efforts have been made by the applicant to mitigate the concerns of the nearby residents. And I do believe that there's a lot of fear that has perhaps overblown people's perspectives of what's happening here. I do think there's a good here, and I think it's the right thing to approve it, and I support the Alderman in doing so.
Dick Felter. Dick Felter, oh, he's right there.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity.
Well,
My name is Dick Felter, and my wife Marilyn, and we live at 807 Masonwood Drive. When we walk in our front door, we will be looking at the building, okay? So we know what it's all about, and I've got a long list. We've heard it all tonight, and we've had a beautiful representation here. But I want you to know that years ago, the early 70s, I attended a meeting down at Balance in Clayton on the premise of forming Town and Country. The reason why the citizens showed up was for zoning, for protection, because under St. Louis County, we felt that we didn't have that protection. And we fought for all the zoning along Highway 40, chemical companies that were going to go back in where Fairfield is. We fought that, and we thought it was good. It was worthwhile. And getting back to this project now, I want you to know that I was at the very beginning, and we're the Byrne people. The Ewalds, Felters, the Smiths, we're the ones that stood there and said, we don't want to drive down Masonwood Drive and look at buildings and stuff. I mean, we have the prettiest lane there is, we think, in town and country. And this is going to change it all, and we know it, and we don't want it. And so I just want you to know from a heartfelt, years and years, I'm a geezer now, I'm 85, but I want you to know that it was all, it was worth it. We have this beautiful town and country, we want to keep it that way. And the pressures coming in from zoning and all of that, we're tired, we fought. And we really hope that you'll do the right thing for the neighbors. And the neighbors that I'm referring to that were there, the Ewalds, Smiths, Jerry in Maryland, Cahills, the Seeleys, the other Smiths, Matt, his wife, the Knowles, and the Havens. That's a name that should ring a bell with you folks. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Mr. Felter, thank you for coming up and talking, and I'm just curious, since you were kind of around town and country at the beginning, how long have you lived in your present home? How long have you been there?
52 years.
Isn't that awesome? That's awesome.
52
Congratulations.
years. And when we moved in there, I like to tell the story. We counted a brick. We didn't have any money. The zoning was okay for that subdivision. We got a 1.5-story house and it worked. So it's been beautiful, it's been wonderful, and we've been blessed.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Next is Barb Quigley.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Quigley. My husband and I are independent living residents at Mason Point. Our address is 13198 South Outer 40 Road, Unit 348, in Town and Country. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. When my husband and I were each faced with a parent who needed more assistance and support than we could provide, I contacted every facility within a large geographical area of West County and visited most of them. Having been a nurse, I knew what to look for, what questions to ask, and whom to consult. I quickly ruled out any facility that did not offer the full spectrum of care, that is independent living, assisted living, skilled, and memory care. In order to ensure that there would be no need for our parents to move elsewhere or to try and hire additional help when their needs changed. We selected an LSS community, Merrimack Bluffs, in Baldwin, for a variety of reasons, including LSS's over 100-year history of caring, and we were not disappointed. However, the experience of transitioning our parents from their homes when the situation was no longer sustainable was fraught with feelings of sadness, anger, and guilt, to name just a few. Perhaps some of you have faced a similar situation with a relative, parent. Given the painfulness of these experiences, my husband and I resolved to make our own choices and plans so as not to place a similar burden on our own children in the future. Because of our past experience with LSS, it was once again at the top of our list. When we heard they had purchased the JCA property and would soon add independent living to the other levels of care, that made the decision much easier. We had lived over 30 years just off Henry Avenue, a short walk to Whole Foods and Target, and we're excited to have an option that would allow us to remain in familiar surroundings. Little did we know at that time that my husband would be diagnosed with a progressive neurological condition. We are so grateful for the choice we made because we are living in a caring and supportive community which will allow us to remain together even if one of us requires supportive care in the future because it's all under one roof. We are encouraged that LSS is reconfiguring the existing facility to maximize their ability to meet our needs and those of the surrounding community. enabling town and country residents to remain in town and country. I respectfully request that you support this initiative, and if the need arises, that you join our community too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quigley. Next name I have is Dirk Dispers. Dirk, D-I-S-P-E-R-S. Yeah, that's- moving right along. Sister Pauline Wilbrow. Welcome, sister. How do you pronounce your last name? Just
Very close, Bill Bro.
Thank you, welcome.
My name is Sister Pauline Bilbro. I live at 13190 South Outer 40 Road, Mason Point. 4 years ago, we lived in Normandy. And we have always had the option, or the desire to age in place. And the place that we lived in was aging beyond us. And we were aging beyond the care of a simple convent could provide. And we were looking for a place to move a large number of sisters. We looked many places, had real estate assistance and so on, and came upon the possibility of a wing at Mason Point that was under renovation. We had the happy opportunity to be able to move 24 sisters between the ages of 70 and 100 in 2 days to Mason Point, December 17th and 18th of 2018. We were very happy that we were able to bring sisters who were independent, needing some care, needing more care, and memory care. We were able to move into an extension of the Mason Point building that became a convent inside of a larger facility. They welcomed us warmly, the residents, the staff. We were very, very pleased to turn our convent life into a segment of that building. We feel that we have benefited plenty from being there and have come to understand from the residents, they are very happy that we are there also. During the COVID-19 difficulties, we could not have finer care that was given to us at Mason Point and given to everyone, even though we had to be a year in shutdown. The way they were able to bring meals to the different neighborhoods, to take care of those who needed the care until they needed to go to the hospitals or whatever. We did lose 5 sisters in 1 month to the COVID, and we're given very much assistance in terms of our ability to have the funerals away from there, but zoomed in. I really would strongly be very attentive to the needs of what the neighbors are saying. I certainly hear what they're saying, but I also know that there is a tremendous need. When you think of the waiting list that there is, the needs of not just ourselves, which happened to us 4 years ago, but there are other religious communities also who are looking for very good care for members of their facility, their communities, needing a spectrum of care. I strongly support the Mason Point project. Thank you.
Suzanne Scott.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Aldermen. I am Suzanne Scott. I am at 13198 South Outer 40 Road, Unit 314 in Town and Country. My husband Royce, I just spoke to you earlier, and I moved into Mason Point on February the 11th, 2021 in a snowstorm. But we didn't have to worry about the snow because Mason Point took care of all that for us. So we love our beautiful home. It's wonderful. We have so many friends, and you walk down the hall and you speak to everybody. Everybody knows you. You know everybody else. there's a feeling of love and camaraderie there. Anybody would do anything for any of the residents, anytime. And friends and relatives that we've had come in say they feel that love and they feel that concern and that happiness. We have always said that we feel like we're on a cruise ship that never docks. Because as my husband said, the people are wonderful, the food is outstanding, 3 meals a day. We have an 11-page menu. We go to the dining room and we have soup specials, we have lunch specials, we have dinner specials, we have blue plate specials. In fact, I very seldom open the menu because there's so many specials that I could use and they could catch my eye. That's just wonderful. And if you're sitting at a 4 tabletop and somebody comes in and you invite them to eat with you, or if you're a 6-rounder, the same thing. We are just such a wonderful, loving family there. And they have birthday bashes for us. And I can tell you that most everybody out there will say that they've gotten more birthday cards being at Mason Point than they've ever gotten in their lives. It's wonderful. We have not only the wonderful dining facilities, we have the chapel where we have services on Wednesday morning, and on Sundays, the Catholics have the Mass at 9 o'clock and the Lutheran service at 10:30, and we're served by a chaplain. We also have a fitness room, an exercise room, indoor saltwater pool, and someone mentioned the volleyball team that they go to other places like Aberdeen Heights and compete. There are, the pub, you can have lunch in at the pub, happy hours from 4 to 5, from 6 to 7 on Friday night, you have music and dancing. There's a club room right by with shuffleboard and pool and chess and TV and anything that you want to do. We have a club room with a beautiful baby grand piano, and the men's Bible study meets there. We also have a women's Bible study. And every Tuesday is music time from 4 to 5. Either Maya from Assisted Living plays, or I have sing-alongs every other Tuesday. There's just so much to do that you can't do it all. And I passed out a sheet to all of you to see what is offered to us the whole month of April. We go on outings, we have speakers, we have musical presentations, we just do all kinds of fun things. Stretching exercises, Tai Chi, that was Tai Chi. And speaking of Mahjong, we do have Mahjong clubs, we have bridge clubs, we have everything that you would want to have. It's wonderful. So that's what we feel like we're on a cruise ship that never done. Thank
Betty Williams. Betty, is there a Betty Williams? Oh, there she is. I'm sorry.
I come from the same place. I can go just as far as she did. But I have been at Mason Point for 2 years. And the experience is really wonderful when you become a single person, that your husband has passed away and you're in a spot of what you're going to do with your life. And I made the decision to go there. All the members of the staff are friendly. They take time to talk to you and ask how you are doing. And if there is anything needed, you can have it. When I am walking, everyone says hello and addresses me by my first name like they've known me for years. I was living alone and had fallen twice. I had wonderful neighbors who helped me. But here I feel I have a safe place to live with help only minutes away when I need it. Not only is the staff looking out for me, but the residents look out for each other. Now I am no longer living alone. I have always been an active person. Mason Point has me active again with activities 7 days a week, and my family can join me in family activities. On Monday and Wednesdays, we have our families make the dinner. And we all eat together, the families eat with us, and it's just a magnificent place and feeling to have. I also enjoy my daily walks through the building. It gives me the exercise I need, and the layout is safe. My medicines are taken care of by my nurses station. I do not have to be concerned about that. And at 93, one of the most important things has been bonding with other residents. We enjoy being with each other at meals, doing activities together, and visiting each other. And we look out for each other. This has given me back the social connections I needed, connections I was losing as I age.
Thank you, Betty. Mike, Gerald. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
Once, okay.
Most people say Jarrell, so Jarrell's pretty good. Hi, I'm Mike Jarrell. I live at 12829 Topping Acres. I'm a resident of Town and Country, and I've been a resident of Town and Country most of my life. My parents moved to 13277 Tall Pine Court in 1979. Minus a few years in college when I couldn't afford to live here. But I'm also a business owner, and I've been a contractor at Mason Point and the Cedars and the JCA project and many, many nursing homes other than Lutheran Senior Services. I, like many Town and Country residents, are actually in favor of the project. And I kind of want to state why. As a member of the community, I care about having quality services available for seniors. My father passed away 2 years ago. Unfortunately, my mother was looking for a place to go. We did a lot of research. I think my family was 100% in agreement that we needed to go to a Lutheran Senior Service facility. We've done work with with Lutheran Senior Services and a lot of other nursing home providers, and I don't really consider them equal. Lutheran Senior Services puts a great deal of effort into making sure everybody's taken care of, everybody's comfortable. And as was stated earlier, I forget by who, but if they run out of money, they make a great deal of effort to raise funds and ensure they can stay in their facilities. So, we wouldn't put my mother, who's honestly not that far away, or my in-laws who aren't Town and Country residents, but honestly live 5 minutes from our house, anywhere but a Lutheran Senior Service facility. And we think it would be great if they could stay where they grew up and where they spent most of their life in Town and Country. As I said, we were a contractor on the original project and all the way through, so I know where most of the skeletons in the building are. It's unbelievable to see how it's been transformed in the last 5 years. I would tell you it was probably a C-class facility, and now it's definitely an A+ class facility. I've sat through many of the design meetings. I'm obviously not involved directly in what's going on here because we're an HVAC contractor, not a civil contractor like Mr. Stock. But that being said, I know Lutheran Senior Services cares about the residents. I see much more effort and much more caring out of them than I do out of other developers in general, for that matter, not just nursing homes. They have meetings, they talk about how to get the project passed. They're doing it from a perspective of how can they make the neighbors happy, not how can they get the neighbors to be quiet so they can build their facility and then ignore them in the future. I can't speak to anything previous to this because I wasn't part of it. I guess that's my perspective. So I guess I'm asking you to please approve Lutheran Senior Services project.
Thank you. Next is Pamela Owens. Pamela Owens. And next is Joy, is it pronounced Haury, H-A-U-R-Y?
Haury.
Haury, please, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Joy Howry, and I live at 801 Middlefield Court in Town and Country with my husband. I'm also speaking a little bit for my dad, Jim Haven, who's 95 and who lives at 822 Mason Wood Drive in his home that he moved to with me as a little kid in 1969. So we've been residents here for 54 years. I want to first give you a quote. He said, "This is going to go past my bedtime, so you young people go to this meeting, please." But I find out I'm old enough to get in this place. He says, "This will be lovely for the people who move in." And we've heard a lot of people talk about that. But not so lovely for the existing residents who purchased property and lived in homes and had a vision of what town and country would be. I think the question is getting slightly framed incorrectly through several speakers, and I would beg your indulgence to say, we're not here to vote in favor or against continuum of care for older residents or non-residents who wish to move into the community. That's not what the question is. We're in favor of lots of things. We're in favor of amusement parks. We're in favor of horse racing tracks. We're in favor of pro baseball stadiums, but that doesn't mean that that's consistent with the prior approval and decisions of this board and the decisions for this property as a skilled nursing facility, not an apartment complex. Secondly, we've heard lots of people talk about how the business environment has changed. Business environments change all the time on lots of businesses. It is not your problem to solve a problem for an owner of a place in town and country whose business model has changed. If I owned 10 acres of land in town and country and came to you and said, you know, people are really tired of this 1 acre kind of concept with a house, I'd like to build a 30-story apartment building because I have 10,000 people on a waiting list. I hope you wouldn't approve that. It's not our job as the board to represent us to solve a business problem for a corporation that's here. I ask you again to consider whether the changed proportion of units, they call it the unit mix, is really consistent with the prior approval to have skilled nursing facilities in our community. I will tell you, Aberdeen, a similar type of facility in Kirkwood, tried to get somebody into their skilled nursing. There isn't any because very little, because they have turned it all into apartments, which is what this proposal really is. I ask you, why is this not an apartment development? Do these residents take title to their property? I have title to my home at 801 Millfield Court. If they don't, it's not a residence, it's an apartment. Do the residents have to put up substantial multi-$100,000 deposits? Yes, and that keeps out the low net worth people. But there is no zoning, no law, no regulation that says that has to continue, either for Lutheran or a subsequent owner of this property. If Lutheran were to abandon this, what do you have there when this is done? A big apartment complex is what you're being asked to approve. There was no age restriction originally when residents called and asked. That's kind of an apartment, isn't it? That's not guaranteed senior living. But what if they sell? Again, there's nothing in the zoning, the regulations to permanently require this be an elder community. And again, I ask you, is it truly a skilled nursing facility anymore as they convert these all to apartments? They could lease to anyone of any age at any dollar level with no zoning restrictions. I don't think it would have to come to you. I ask you to disapprove this for the future of the city and the residents who live here currently, not for those who might wish to move in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. For the next speaker, I apologize, I cannot read the first name, the only, it's Ewald, E-W-O-L-D-T, whoever. I apologize, I have trouble reading. What is your first name, ma'am?
It's Joanne.
Joanne,
I
thank you.
have a tremor.
Yeah, that's
So
fine,
I'm
that's all right,
sorry.
guys, that is fine.
Mr. Mayor and Aldermen. My,
Just speak right into it, that'd be great. Good, thank you.
I'm Joanne Ewald,
Sounds good.
and I live at 801 Smith Drive. Our side property borders Mason Point. We're the left side of the circle of Masonwood Drive. And the illustration that was on the board, I'm number 3. Okay, so you know where I live.
Right.
My husband and I moved here in 1978. We came from Memphis. Our home, if you figure it out, it's 45 years that we've lived in our home. We've seen a lot of changes. And our house was 10 years old when we bought it. Our neighbors are Dick and Marilyn Belter. Dick spoke earlier today. Smiths are on the other side, and they've been there for 40 years. Our first battle, I'll call it, happened shortly after we moved in. We found out that they were going to, well, I'll back up. I'm going to give you some history. The Fairfield property was going to be Mellencroft's experimental headquarters. And John Carey built our house, Dr. John Carey, and he was instrumental in organizing the group of people who had to deal with St. Louis County. And they went along with the residents that this was not a good idea. Shortly after we bought the property in 78, the Lieberman brothers bought that property and were going to build Fairfield. We knew when we bought our house that the people in the area had voted to form Ward 3 of Town and Country. It was in litigation, and they could not do any of the ruling. We still were under St. Louis County. So we had to deal with St. Louis County and the development of Fairfield. And originally, they were on our side of the water that is on Fairfield's property. They were going to have 3-story buildings, and the county went along with the residents in forming Fairfield area. That was built, and then the nursing home, it was a very small nursing home. I don't know how many beds it had. It was next to our property, but between us and that, our house was a 5-acre piece of property. We were going to buy that piece of property, and we found out the JCAs had bought it. So we started going through plans with the JCAs on this 5-acre property. The Smiths bought their house 5 years after we moved in, and Mrs. Smith called me. They had 4 little boys. She said, "Get over here quickly." I ran over there thinking something was wrong with one of the children. And here were these 2 men that I had never seen before in her backyard. And these men were surveyors for the highway department. And they were there surveying the land, this 5 acres, because JCA's had sold it, the land or the dirt, to the highway department. This was when they were developing Highway 40 into the Interstate 64. So you drive, thank you. So you drive on 5 acres that was between us and the small nursing home. I ran home, I called Town and Country. There was nothing on the books, there was nothing they could do. So we went through more plans on how they were going to develop this property. Then we call it the Hill, became available. And that's the land that we're talking about tonight.
Okay.
It's the Hill. they had too much dirt. Town and Country said, build the berm, protect these people, that you destroy the natural berm that we had. And so that's how that berm came about. And it has been wonderful. It has certainly given us the privacy that we had before. And again, it was spoken that we're not against the services of Mason Point at all. We just don't think it needs to expand into our neighborhood and make it look like that picture that you saw earlier tonight. So I think what I'm doing is showing you how we've lived here a long, long time. On our street, I don't know how many people there are that we've all been there for years and years and years. And now we have the second generation moving in. We have 3 houses that are occupied by people that grew up on the street. So it's a lovely neighborhood, and we want to keep it that way. We have fought, you might say, for 45 years to maintain it. And so I'm asking that you think of the residents of Town and Country and keep that country in our name. Thank you very much for your time.
Joanna, thanks for your comments, and I've been in practice 44 years, and we still don't have a medicine that works for tremors. That's really the truth. Dan Gelmer? Dan Gelmer?
Is there an address? Can you say the address?
832 Mason Ridge? Okay, all right. Then, last one, Mr. Ted Allen.
My name is Ted Hellman. I reside at 14236 Anderley Woods Drive. I'm here tonight to speak in the strongest possible opposition to the expansion of Mason Point. That means no disrespect to the folks that live here now. We're not talking about closing Mason Point or downsizing it. We're talking about expanding it, which we feel is very inappropriate. I have great respect for Mr. Stock. I've done projects with Mr. Stock. He's an excellent professional. I would endorse him. Unfortunately, we don't believe that his client has the right purpose in place. I support the mission of Lutheran Services. They do a great job, but I don't support this project. And we'll get into just a minute why it's not supportable. The first thing we have to understand is that this is really increasing the density within Town and Country. Country means space, open, air. Ms. Francisco, when she ran to represent us in our ward, spoke very enthusiastically about the country, Town and Country, and her interest in keeping the country in Town and Country. As you expand density, it's a zero sum. You start reducing the space, and therefore, as density increases, the country decreases. They are cross purposes. So the density that occurs by Mr. Redmond's admission of more people, more apartments, really is at cross purposes with the country and Town and Country. Now, you may not want to keep the country in Town and Country, but if you do, as most of us as residents do, this is in direct conflict with the spirit of Town and Country. Secondly, this company is a not-for-profit. It is true, but they are a special interest. Special interest means that they have revenue goals. I work in the financial services industry. That means that they have targets, revenue targets that they have to achieve. They're doing this because it makes sense for them financially. If it didn't make sense financially, they wouldn't do it. So why do we then, on the Town and Country side as residents, have to sacrifice our peace of mind, give up the peace of mind of Town and Country at the expense of density so that they can achieve a revenue goal? It doesn't pass the smell test. Doesn't mean we're trying to put our great neighbors at Mason Point at disadvantage. We're not. We simply don't think that there is an advantage whatsoever for the residents of Town and Country. In fact, it's a negative. We'll also talk about traffic. The statement was made that, well, there won't be that many additional cars. Well, there are going to be additional parking spaces according to the plan. So additional parking spaces mean more cars. everyone in this room needs to be aware that that decision is not being made in isolation or in a vacuum. The Planning and Zoning Commission unfortunately approved a project at Woods Mill Center that's going to involve thousands of cars coming on the South Outer Road. So those cars, compounded with the additional cars in Mason Point, are going to make those of us that use the South Outer Road make it very challenging for us given the increase in traffic. So the increase in traffic, while maybe fairly minimal here, has to be taken in the context of the additional traffic that's going to be coming from the Maryville project if approved. Lastly, I want to make sure that you understand that we believe strongly in your role as representing us as the citizens. We appreciate your volunteering, your time. Alderman Morgan, when I first met him, said that when making tough decisions, the residents should come first. And we were heartened by that. We believe that. We're not trying to take anything away from Lutheran services. We're simply trying to preserve the country and town and country, to reduce the density, to avoid the increase in traffic, and to keep town and country what we all want it to be, without doing anything that's going to compromise the quality of life at Mason Point, other than perhaps reduced revenue for Lutheran services. Thank you.
Here. I'd like to see, that was our last speaker, so I'd open it up to members of the board if they have questions for our presenters.
I have some questions in no particular order. And I have a request for our city administrator. I would like, could you please distribute to the board the minutes from the, I believe, April 2018 Board of Aldermen meeting as it pertains to this proposed development, minutes and votes?
Just for clarification, you're talking about just the Board of Aldermen meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Thank you. And then I do have some additional questions though for, I can throw them out there, and then whoever would like to respond from the applicant / developer, please do so. My first, and I'm sorry, I missed some of these things in the presentation. So one, how many acres does the current site sit on in our city?
$33.47.
33.4.
33.47 acres.
Thank you. And then with the presentation that you gave this evening with the homes and showing the sight line, how many total homes will have a direct sight line to the third story build out if it were to pass?
Well, there were 16 site sections. So of those 16 site sections, there were 2 in Fairfield, and then the rest from the south and to the east. When you say a direct line of sight to those, we drew those direct lines of sight. There's the intervening berm, and the berm we're constructing to obstruct that view.
How many can see the roof of the building if you were to construct this 3-story building? Would all of them see it?
No, not all of them would see the roof, but
So can you give me a number?
Do you want to hook back in, or are you just going to go off of your own?
I'll just bring it here. I'll see on the screen. Thank you.
Well, while you're looking that up, do you mind if I present my other
Sure, go ahead.
questions? My next question would be, in, I believe 17, there was a bond issue, around 97 million to do the current build out as it exists today, knowing that not all that funding went directly to that. But my question is with regard to financing, if this development should pass, do you plan on taking out a bond issue, or how will that be financed?
Answer that question. I'll defer to Drew for that question.
I really don't have a good answer for that. It's information that we can get to you.
Okay.
That happens more at our corporate office.
And so you'll be able to get that.
Certainly.
Would you be able to distribute that before our next Board of Aldermen meeting, so it gives the board the time to look at it before that evening?
Yes.
When we actually go to vote?
Yes.
And then, one last question I think that I have would be, if this proposed development should go through, what would be the value of the building, of your new 3-story building? The assessed value.
I don't know the answer to that either, Pam.
Okay, so can you include that in the
Sure.
information? And then, I'm sorry, I do have one more question for you. Could you provide a statement to us, to this room tonight? So you're basically here because you want 85,000 square feet. Everyone in this room is gonna be presented with a property tax, potentially in 2024, maybe 2026. For the first time in approximately 30 years, we may be paying a property tax. What do you say to those residents sitting in this room, knowing that you will be bringing in 75 housing units where those residents will be exempt? What is your comment or statement to us?
I would say that Lutheran Senior Services is a tax-paying entity. We pay taxes in St. Louis County. We've entered into an agreement with St. Louis County that's public record and available for everybody to see. We pay taxes according to the law.
And everyone in this room pays taxes to St. Louis County as well. It's just, for the first time in almost 30 years, we all will be paying a property tax. And so that's, I hear concern from everyone out here because you want to expand your campus, and the purpose of your campus is to keep everybody on site, on facility, and not maybe have as much use as a residential property owner of our service and amenities, and then also be exempt from a property tax. So I just wondered if there was a statement you would like to provide for comfort to those residents.
John, I don't know if you have any thoughts there, but I don't know that I have anything substantial. I mean, we're
Okay.
kind of taking
And I
everything
just
in right
wanted
now.
to ask the question.
And certainly could provide some follow-up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Alderman will be glad to provide some follow-up to
Okay.
that question with from the corporate leadership at Lutheran Senior Services so that you're satisfied.
We would appreciate that. And just so everyone in the room understands, so tonight we are asking questions and we will have first reading. And on that first reading, we won't deliberate. We will deliberate as a board of aldermen at the second reading when we vote. So that's why we're presenting these questions tonight.
Could I ask one question? Coming from someone who does not have a legal background at all, could an entity like this say, hey, we'd like to voluntarily pay taxes to the city? I don't even know what's legal or not legal, but it wouldn't, I'm just sort of thinking out loud.
That would be a question really for the Lutheran Senior Services leadership. And I would be authorized and obviously to make a.
I mean, just answer me this, would that even be illegal? I don't even want to suggest something that's remotely illegal.
I wouldn't say it'd be illegal generally, as a
That would be
general.
damned unusual, but I mean.
Sure, it would be unusual. But actually, there are provisions in the law about making contributions to governmental entities. So,
Mayor, if you'd like, I think to the extent you're asking for a general statement of the law, there are mechanisms where non-tax-paying entities can make payments to governments, whether it's through mechanisms such as pilots or payments in lieu of taxes. I believe there's also a mechanism that certain entities can voluntarily submit themselves to taxes through the Department of Revenue, but that's not something I'm particularly versed in.
normally pilots are associated with special tax and interest and redevelopment agreements of an entire area and an entirely different financial scheme. Yes.
That makes sense.
Right.
All right, I would ask. And you had one other question that didn't get answered.
I think
It was
Did I?
about the sidelines.
Oh, yeah.
And would a simpler question be that the people who see the top of the building now, would there be more people that would see the top of the building than exist now?
There would not be more. I think the answer to the question is those that see the building today, which are particularly the residents that live on Mason Bend Lane, they sit up high, they see the building, they will continue to see the building. As you move around to the south and you're on Mason Wood Drive, those homes that are down at the cul-de-sac, I don't believe they see the building, they won't see the building. As you go around to Fairfield, the northernmost resident of Fairfield has a view, because they're in front of the berm. They'll have a view of the building, and as you can see, they see the other existing buildings, but it's about 800 feet away. So the intent of the berm, the earthen berm and the trees is to prevent a change in what people see today. Basically, that's what it's doing, to mitigate that building height.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
That was good.
Alderman Farrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Redmond, I have a couple questions. Can you tell me what the occupancy level is on your skilled nursing today?
I'm trying to remember the exact number, it's around 105, 105 to 110.
So you're going from 105 down to 35?
35 units. It could be as many as 50 residents, probably, at least initially. But yes, 35 total units.
What happens to them? The ones that, the difference between 135 and 50? 40?
I think what we see happening more and more is people bringing services into assisted living and independent living. People who in the past moved into skilled nursing. And so we see less demand than we saw years ago. And what's led to the number of residents there today.
I think he's asking that if you have to build a new facility and some of those white people, and you're going to a smaller number of beds, that some of the people in those beds have to go somewhere. I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so that's going to have an impact on our construction timeline, on the renovations that we're doing in the existing building. And so the speed with which we can continue our renovations will depend upon the number of residents that we have with us. So in some cases, that could mean delaying construction. That's not related to the project that we're talking about here tonight. It's related to the interior renovations that are ongoing currently.
Okay. So you're not moving into another facility or?
No, we're not forcing anybody to move, but I will just, in total transparency, we do have an assisted living that's been offered up to a few of the residents, but no decisions have been made by those residents that they want to go there. So, nobody's been forced to move.
All right. And then the question of apartments came up. So can you explain a little bit about, are these, I'll call them living facilities, because I don't want to use the word apartment.
Thank you.
But where the people live, the residents live, are those owned? Are they leased? What's the relationship there?
Yeah, so it's a landlord-tenant relationship. When our residents move in, they pay an entrance fee that I've spoken about, between $300,000 and $500,000. They can choose between a 50% or 95% refund option. And so once they vacate the apartment or the unit, then depending on what they selected, that money then goes back to them or their family, whoever they designate it to be returned to.
But they have no ownership.
Correct.
Are you good?
I have several other questions.
Fire away.
Mr. Stock?
Yes.
You had said, sorry, can you hear me? You had said that skilled nursing right now is about 105 to 110. And you have, it's currently, you can hold 230. Have you ever maximized that 230?
No, I wouldn't say we've ever maximized it, but our skilled nursing census has been significantly higher than it is today. We have gotten closer to around 215 probably. Would have been about the highest point. But so significantly higher than it is right now.
Go ahead.
Okay. You go ahead.
There's been a lot of questions about the trees. So can you clarify
when you're planting the new trees, you're taking out, and you gave us a list, 10 foot, 10 inch, 12 inch, 14 inch, and these are old trees. I mean, they're, I don't know how tall, but fairly tall trees. What are you replacing them?
Yeah, I think that the misconception is how tall the trees are removed. That photograph that you saw, those trees are not being removed. That was shown by the opposition. You know, again, I go back, when we presented this plan, and we submitted a plan to the city, and we asked the city to hold until we could meet with the residents. That plan that had 147 foot of extension to the south did impact large mature trees. I was the first one to know it. We staked it. My surveyors went out there and we staked it. I walked it, took photographs, invited the neighbors, said it's all staked, here's where the retaining walls are gonna go. It was the subsequent meeting and discussion that pushed everything further to the north. So what I presented as far as 13 trees to the south, that's all that's being removed on the south side. The majority of the trees are on the north side of the berm, and they're less than, they're less than 20 years old. They were planted with the original development that occurred there. So there's a limited amount of trees. I think some of those that I depicted, the red circles, those were all, or the black circles on mine, the red circles on there, those had the diameter of the tree and the height of the tree, and those are all being saved.
Okay. But you're removing a 14-inch circular tree, I guess you're calling it caliper.
There's one of them, yeah, so it's a 14-inch.
12s, 5-10s, I mean, those don't grow overnight.
No.
Those are old trees.
Yeah, absolutely. The ones we're planting are 2 to 3 inches, so it takes probably decades to get to a 14-inch tree. So there's one of
the trees that you're planting and replacing them.
So the deciduous trees are anywhere from 2 to 3 inch caliper, which is 15 to 18 feet in height. And then the evergreen trees, the arborvitaes, the junipers, those are all minimum 8 foot in height.
Mayor, before we continue on, it's 10:30 and by code, section 110.110, the board is compelled to make a motion and take a vote on an adjournment at this point. So I would ask that someone make that motion and then the board decide if they'd like to adjourn or continue hearing this public hearing.
Can I make a comment on that?
You sure can.
I hope someone makes that, and I hope the board sees fit to continue. You just second.
So before us right now, I have a motion before the body to adjourn because it's 10:30 by code. If you'd like to continue this public hearing, you will vote nay when I call your name. Alderman Holman?
Nay.
Alderman Hughes?
Nay.
Alderman Francisco?
Nay.
Alderman Mortland?
Nay.
Alderman Perot?
Yeah.
So that fails unanimously at this point. And the board is empowered to make that motion again for the rest of the evening if they'd like, but this one was the only one that was required by code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. I don't know who would like to talk to this one. There were pictures shown both on the screens and out front that showed a lot of lights from homes to the facility. And I guess my question is, how old are those photos? Is it current? Is that what it really looks like today?
I can answer that since they were my pictures. Yes, I took them about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. The picture, well, the winter picture that.
Can you come up to the microphone if you're going to speak? Sorry, so I can have everyone hear it. For the record, this is Trent Phelps.
Okay, those are my pictures. The winter one was taken a number of years ago prior to when Mason Point's expansion was built. I couldn't tell you the year exactly, although I probably could if I looked at my computer. There's probably a timestamp. The one that was taken at night, that's showing the lights, was taken about 3 weeks ago from my deck with my camera, with a I mean, there was nothing done to the picture or anything, I just went out there and took a picture with my camera. So, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Martin.
Mr. Governor, I have a couple questions. So I'm not gonna assume anything, so I wanna kind of understand the change in, I'll call it service or units. Help me understand from 2017 to today, the need for the change in service overall.
Really, the biggest driver of it is the, just decreased demand for skilled nursing that we've seen. And I mean, it's been a challenging industry for a number of years, but that has only, again, the pandemic changed an awful lot in our industry in 2020. And we saw a significant decrease in the interest in skilled nursing. We see more of an interest in assisted living and independent living, as demonstrated by the wait list. Those are people that want to move into our community that we don't have a place for them to move into. And on the other hand, then we have all this open space in skilled nursing. And so we're trying to redevelop our property within our footprint to meet the needs of the market and what the market is telling us that they want, in a way that, this project financially would, somebody had made the point, we're doing this project, it would be better financially for us to do this project. It would help us to be sustainable, because we're losing a significant amount of money on this property every single year. And yes, it's not your problem. But what we're trying to do is redevelop this property to meet the needs of the market. And there's a decrease in the amount of interest in skilled nursing.
So I always say numbers tell the story. And so current today, 36% of your units are independent living, 11% are assisted living, and 53 are skilled nursing. And the proposed, it goes to 61% independent living, 19.5% of assisted living, 10% of assisted living memory care, which is a new service, and then down to 10% of skilled care. So you're going from 53 to 10. So it's drastically changing the overall complexion and the makeup of the facility. So understanding that the expansion happened in 2017, the residents went through that. Looking at it, what other options did you consider within the existing footprint of the building, as opposed to making change to the residence areas?
What other options?
So instead of coming closer to the residents, what option within the facilities and buildings you have that you could adjust to make the mix of service change?
Well, so I don't know, I might invite up someone from construction from
Yeah,
our
no, I know,
organization, you know, we looked at a number of different options, and the neighbors asked us to do that. You know, people have asked us about, couldn't we develop on the east side of the campus, and you know, it just doesn't really, it's not viable for us as a project then at that point, because it's on the opposite end of campus, as our independent living is today. And so it doesn't make sense for people to walk all that way across campus to access the various amenities. You know, we did look at a number of different options, and this was really the only thing that we could land with that we felt was financially feasible to do, and still accomplish what we think we need to do for the long-term sustainability of our campus, which was to offer more assisted living and
And I don't know, I might have thought this or read this, or I'm not sure, but I wanted to confirm. If you go the opposite side and you go north towards 64, and you have that open area in between that's a parking lot, is there a reason why that wasn't considered? You know what I'm talking about, George?
I do. I think, you know, to answer the question, in the southwest corner, the existing building was there, had the opportunity to raise it. You know, it was obsolete relative to this mission. The question about the site and the constraints, that large asphalt parking lot
is layered with a series of, I forget, 72 or 84-inch corrugated metal pipes. So that's where all the stormwater from the campus goes. It's attenuated. So that whole footprint, and to the west, to Fairfield, and part of why there's that photograph that you see through the deciduous trees, very mature deciduous trees, but when the leaves off, you do see through, the drainage way's there. So there isn't the ability to have built the berm in 1999, 2000 because of that drainage way. The berm spanned the drainage way to the south and culvert was put on it, but that's jurisdictional waters in the US along the west side, an open creek that goes underneath I-64.
Okay.
There was questions from the residents about the northeast, the small parking lot that's on the far northeast corner. And Mr. Redmond spoke a little bit about connectivity of that independent being on the west and put in the east. And then the other is what other open green space is there is a detention basin in front of the skilled nursing. So there's a dry basin that's on the north side between the highway and the building. Again, so all the stormwater for this campus generally goes from the south to the north, is attenuated and connected into the I-64 drainage system.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? And then, Alderman Hughes.
Okay. Alderman Mortland kind of went into, when I was sitting here, when you said the market is not there for skilled nursing and the industry has changed due to COVID. How did COVID have an effect? I'm an art major, I'm not a music, I'm medical. I'm sorry, I meant to say that. How did it change things?
How did COVID change things in our industry?
Yeah.
Is that the question? People rethought communal living, and especially people rethought communal living with comorbidities and compromised states of health. The news articles, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding my words, I'm getting tired.
That's all right.
Can I maybe just throw, just very simply,
Okay,
when COVID hit, grandma's in the nursing home,
yeah,
skilled nursing, you can't go in there. And you have to see grandma's 90th birthday through a window. And people rethought that and thought, I don't want to not see grandma or granddad. We say it's grandma because granddad come to heaven. But grandma, we want to see her, so we're going to leave her in the house and we're going to bring nursing services into the house. Because for a very long period of time, there were an awful lot of senior Americans who died without a family behind because they were not allowed to have a nursing home. Correct me if that's.
No, great answers, thank you.
trying to make the transition here. Thank you.
Right.
I just have one more question. Did you ever look at the ability to take some independent living and use the existing building you have today, take it down where you didn't have to bring the height up to 3 stories and you didn't have to bring the outer perimeter out? I know it would obviously diminish how many apartments you could put in there, but was that ever something you considered? And if you did, how many apartments would it take it down to?
Yeah, it is something that our architect looked at. There were a couple of reasons we didn't do it. It's just the apartments, we didn't feel would be in line with what we provide on our campus. They would have been substantially smaller and not as, it wouldn't have fit what we see as the market is interested in. In addition to that, it would not have offered enough of the independent living units for this whole project to be viable.
Thank you.
And now declare the public hearing closed. I want to thank everybody for coming out and talking.
Yes.
And for having this kind of participation is great, for the passion, but the civilness of it all. I think this is great. I do have a bias for 15-minute Board of Aldermen meetings. But I think this has been great. And so I appreciate everybody's effort and everybody coming out. And we're just gonna continue with our agenda and our meeting. And now I recognize the board's opportunity to provide any reports that they wish to report. More
So Town and Country residents, I want you all, you should have gotten a mailer, right? As we look at our future budget and other things, there's a use tax for internet purchases. It's just like buying local, but it's allowed to have it be on the ballot on April 4th.
And we'll make your property tax.
Folks, can you keep your voices down, please, as you exit?
And Mr. Shelton, I believe this is going to.
You stole my thunder.
Okay. All right. All right.
Transition, I
Oh, sorry.
And I'm happy to make one people.
Yeah, can we, hang on one second, just so I can. Then go.
Okay, and then I'll just stand here. So I'm gonna read my commission report for public. Well, what can I say?
Mayor, can you gavel for me, please? We're still live streaming. I just want to make sure everyone knows.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, I'm also just going to note for the record that Alderman Weezahan has returned to the dais and will participate in the rest of the meeting until he recuses again.
Thank you.
Chris, that was your heads up.
So I have a Public Works Commission update. The Public Works Commission formed 2 subcommittees for the purpose of taking a deeper dive into our performance standards, which include policies, procedures, resident accessibility, implementation with our city's stormwater program and our city's roadways. The effort and work of the Stormwater Subcommittee and Public Works Commission implement significant changes to the Chapter 415 Stormwater Program and develop the efficient and accessible stormwater maintenance program available to residents. To learn more, residents can find detailed information on the stormwater section of our city website. With regard to roads, our city will be spending over $1.6 million on road maintenance and improvements this year. And so what that means is by the end of 2023, 94% of our roads will be at or higher than a 6 on the PACER 10-point scale. The Public Works Commission targets roadway ranking in the 7s. As a result of the subcommittee and commission's work, all roads ranked at between the range of 0 to 5 will be improved this year and removed from that list, which is a great accomplishment by our Public Works Department and Commission. Further, the commission recommends continuing to utilize the PACER scale for ranking of our roadways and to update this report in even numbered years. So the last time the report was updated was 2022 with our intern. So therefore, the Public Works Commission recommends the city budget for an intern in 2024 for this purpose. The road subcommittee has also completed its work as it pertains to private to public street acceptance policy, and they've turned over that work product to the Planning and Public Works Department for next steps. And as a reminder to this board, the moratorium on this policy will expire on June 30th. And then lastly, just a couple of current updates with regard to our roads. The Mason Road improvements will commence in 2024 as per St. Louis County between the intersections of Mason and Clayton up to 6440. And again, that is their roadway, and we are partnering at a small percent on that grant. So that should commence in 2024. I think that's their last extension. So with regard to Clayton Road, the eastbound lane. Road resurfacing will commence as soon as Mother Nature allows it. It needs to be
Next Monday.
well, it has to be dry.
Confirmed.
It has to be dry at above 40 degrees, and there's a lot of rain in the forecast next week. So we'll see. We will see. So it needs to be dry at above 40, and I hope that happens next week. Okay, and then lastly, and this is it for me. Boat Road Improvement Grant application was submitted, and the city will be notified in August.
Thank you.
The end. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You did a great job on this one.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right, unfinished business, bill number 23-09, sponsored by Alderman Evenhill. Without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the second time?
Bill number 2309 is an ordinance approving a conditional use and authorizing a conditional use permit for outside dining at Wild Crush Wine Farm located at 13360 Clayton Road, Suite 105 in the city of Town and Country. Yeah.
I seek a motion and a second to continue.
For the record, that'll be a continuance to April 10th.
Any discussion or amendment on that?
Mayor, I just had I know there's some confusion, I think a misunderstanding by the applicant on the process moving forward. Just had a couple of questions for Mr. Spencer. I know we discussed this at the original hearing, but just to confirm, what are they currently allowed to do under code as far as their outdoor dining and any music will go?
By right, a restaurant such as Wild Crush can have 12 seats or less, and that's it for outside dining. No music, no permanent structures, 12 seats or less. Every restaurant in town, by right, that's what they can have.
Okay, and as a consideration and as a visual to help all of us and any residents, we've allowed them to have, this time being, the 28 requested seats, correct?
Up to 28 seats, as in terms of the process while they're under review.
Because that was the request for their conditional use.
Correct.
Have we heard any firm plans or proposals or ideas back from the applicant?
As of today, we have not been able to establish a communication with the property owner, which is, in staff's opinion, vital for moving forward with a long-term solution to the outside dining that is shared by Wild Crush and the other tenants.
But the property owner gave approval for the original proposal, correct?
Correct.
So I'd be in favor of continuing this to the 10th. But I would, ask for some reconsideration of the 28 seats. If this is going to be a continued indefinitely type of proposal as we're waiting on them to respond.
Is it 12 or 28 seats? I want to be sure.
By right, a restaurant can have up to 12 seats. We've allowed them to have 28 as they've undergone this process. They had special events permits that have been granted time and time again up until this point. The trigger for this CEP was the root pavilion. That's really what brought this into our this room here. And just for the record, the other restaurants on that property, Cleaver Cocktails, also been made aware that by right they have 12 seats if they want more. Which, the outdoor patio season is upon us, they need to do the same thing that Wild Crush is doing, which is why we really need to figure out, a holistic kind of plan for that site, because it's a shared patio.
Yeah, I'm just worried that if we, it'll be 2 months, the next meeting. I don't want to continue this indefinitely to give them, the consideration that you've given them and that the board's given them for, to allow the 28 seats during that time. I mean, if they're not coming up with plans or a new proposal, I don't know if we should be continuing the 28 seat consideration for as long as they need.
I agree. I just don't think they've been a little too passive, kind of want the city to fix their problem. It's their problem.
I thought they were withdrawing.
And just for your awareness, and I think they're planning a pretty big deal around Masters Weekend, a very good group of people in that room.
I didn't hear that.
I'm telling you.
To answer Alderman Bruin's question about the withdrawal, as a follow-up to the withdrawal, what was stated really was for the pergola. After discussion, they said no, they would like to proceed with requesting the CUP that was approved by planning and zoning was presented to the board with, I believe, just the 28 seats. That CUP.
And strike the other items on there?
Without the other items, I believe, but that'll be up to the petitioner to state.
They've been fairly passive, I think.
Thank you for that clarification.
I would ask the city clerk for a roll call vote.
This is on the continuance to 4:10. Alderman Weezahan.
Aye.
Alderman Francisco.
Aye.
Alderman Perot.
Aye.
Alderman Holman.
Aye.
Alderman Mortland.
Aye.
And Alderman Hughes.
Aye.
It carries unanimously.
Thank you. And that'd be okay if the next few things go relatively rapidly. Bill number 23-12, sponsored by Alderman Allen and Perot. Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the second time?
Bill number 2312 is an ordinance approving a property boundary survey and consolidation plat for 516 and 544 Tecumseh Drive in the city of Town and Country, and authorizing the plat to be recorded in the office of the Recorder of Deeds of St. Louis County.
Thank you. I seek a motion and a second.
Motion?
Any discussion or amendment? Alderman
Sorry,
Holman?
sorry.
Okay,
Um,
all right, just go.
So, are the applicants, aware of the adjacent property in a,
The Wyman property, the mausoleum
Yes,
plan,
yes.
park plan?
yes? Are
Yes,
they
I spoke
aware?
with them. I
Okay,
spoke with them.
so can we, right now, we have a wordsmither here, can we add something to this ordinance that confirms that they are in agreement that the city can work with the adjacent property owner to move forward if and when that should occur on the park? Because it is adjacent to their property. So I hear you that they are aware of it, but when it comes before you in however many years out.
So, I don't know this is the mechanism to do it because
Okay.
this is essentially a perfunctory ministerial task of approving a plat that complies. I think, if they were here, we could have a discussion with it, and I understand they were given adequate warning that they probably wouldn't be reached until about 11 p.m. But I mean, if we add that and it wouldn't really be enforceable, if you know what I mean, anyway, because we'd just be adding it to a country approval.
Okay, but
We could say for the record that they're aware of it, and, that's.
I mean, they can build houses on both lots right now. They just
Right.
want to consolidate.
I
Build.
understand that,
Right.
but the other property owner came before us approximately a year or so ago and requested this of the city, and I think we had a handshake agreement of how we would move forward when it's triggered that we would move forward. So I just want to ensure that this property owner is aware of it, and then we have this opportunity to finally have a park in Ward 4, and we don't have that resident with other residents coming forward at the 11th hour saying no.
But I believe you wouldn't legally be able to tie that they wouldn't, I guess you're trying to say they can't oppose any future.
I don't know, that's why
I think
I'm
that's-
asking our city
Yeah.
attorney how we could say that, or just confirm that they've acknowledged it, they understand this is happening going forward. And at this point in time, without plans laid out, they understand that the city is in a verbal agreement with the adjacent property owner.
So I think we could certainly have a statement for the minutes that they're aware of it. The problem is if we can't really condition the approval of this plat on them saying they're okay with it, particularly if we're not really got kind of very concrete plans anyway. But I think as Mr. Shelton's already stated essentially for the record that they're aware of it. But obviously until that materializes, and I don't know, if the plans proceed with the park, that they don't have a veto power by being the neighboring property owner anyway. It's just they may be for or against it, you know what I mean? So I don't.
And can rally the troops. So then just to clarify, we have acknowledged then in our minutes that the property owners of both those plats are aware of what potentially will be happening in the future with regard to a park, parking, and open space area for our community in Ward 4. Okay, great.
Alderman Mortland.
Not to make this complex, but would it be better to have them present for this during the process and have them on record versus us saying we had a conversation?
If you want to continue this and have the property owner or submit something, can they make this contingent on the property owner acknowledging that they're aware of this?
I mean, we could.
So it doesn't have to get.
Right, right.
Yeah, because it's not
I
a
think we can do
legal
that.
Yeah, no, I just don't want to put like, say this,
Yeah, I guess I don't want to wander too far into giving legal advice in a zone, but I mean, you could say that, if they then say no, I don't know where that leaves us, if you know what I mean. But you could certainly, we could certainly ask them to submit something in writing saying that they're, I mean, it sounds like they're supportive of the general concept.
Aware of the
Oh, there you go, so I don't.
I don't know that they're going to commit to being supportive.
I would just advocate on their behalf since they're not here. If they were here, they would say, we would like this plat approved. They want to build a house for the family, long term.
And I know P and Z was very good with it.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with this.
And they had
Gotta do
to
with
desire to
P&Z.
build
It was 8
the
to 0.
house in a specific location, and in order to do that, the two pieces of property needed to be ordered.
And I don't know if P and Z was aware of the situation to the east of their property.
Didn't talk about it.
Even if they say, okay, we're aware of it, they could still come back
Right.
at any time and change. I don't know what this is personally.
Acknowledgement of,
Acknowledging, they could come back and say,
They
yeah,
can
but
still
we didn't see
oppose
the
it in
plans, and now
future.
here are the plans, and we don't like the plans.
It's kind of like the minutes from 2018 that came out tonight. You know?
We're still live
It's
streaming.
still the minutes.
right,
I would like to
Right.
ask City Clerk for a roll call vote.
So for the record, the motion currently before the body is just to approve Bill 2312, the consolidation plat as currently written. Alderman Perot,
Aye.
Alderman Francisco,
Aye.
Alderman Mortland,
Aye.
Alderman Holman,
pass.
Alderman Hughes,
Aye.
Alderman Weezehan,
Aye.
Alderman Holman.
Abstain.
The bill passes by 5 votes and becomes ordinance number 4561. I'm sorry, 4560.
Good point. I think we did that. Bill number 23-13, sponsored by Alderman Holman, without objection to the city clerk to read the bill for the second time.
Bill number 2313 is an ordinance accepting the bid of NB West Contracting Company for the 2023 Clayton Road resurfacing project from Bope Road to I-270 and authorizing an agreement for same.
See a motion.
So moved.
Second. Second. Any discussion or amendment? That's the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Alderman Holman,
Aye.
Alderman Mortland,
Aye.
Alderman Weezehan,
Aye.
Alderman Francisco,
Aye.
Alderman Hughes,
Aye.
and Alderman Perot.
Aye.
The bill passes unanimously and becomes ordinance number 4561.
Thank you. Just for the record, Alderman Weezen has recused himself from bill number 23-14. And I was think sponsorship for this, but first reading of the board as a whole, and without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
With the recusal noted, I will add.
Thank you.
Bill number 2314 is an ordinance amending Title 23 of Chapter 405 zoning regulations of the Municipal Code of the City of Town and Country, specifically Section 405.1800, Plan Development 1, Mason Point, and approving an amended final site development plan for Phase 3 at 13190 South Outer 40 Road.
And this is a minutia, but I thought I heard you say Title 23, and I think it says, looks like Title 22.
I'll check.
Okay.
Mine says 23.
And bill number 23-14 is continued in the meeting on Monday, April 10th, 2023 for the second reading and consideration. Next, bill number 23-15, sponsored by the board as a whole, without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2315 is an ordinance authorizing a professional services agreement work order with HR Green Inc. for engineering design services related to the Longview Farm Park parking lot resurfacing project.
The bill number 2315 is continued to the meeting Monday, April 10th, 2023 for the second reading and consideration. Next, bill number 23-16, the board as a whole. Without objection to the city clerk, read the bill for the first time.
Bill number 2316 is an ordinance amending Title I, Government Code of the Municipal Code of the City of Town and Country, specifically Chapter 140 regarding purchasing regulations.
Bill number 2316 is continued to the meeting of Monday, April 10th, 2023 for the second reading and consideration. Next, bill number 23-17, also board as a whole. Without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2317 is an ordinance amending the 2022 budget by transferring appropriations amongst general fund expenditure accounts, road fund expenditure accounts, capital improvement expenditure accounts, and parks and stormwater expenditure accounts, and appropriating funds to increase inmate security fund expenditure accounts and public art expenditure accounts.
Thank you. Bill number 23-17 is continued to the meeting Monday, April 10th, 2023 for the second reading and consideration. Next, bill number 23-18, also board as a whole. Without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2318 is an ordinance amending the 2023 budget by transferring funds from the general fund to the opioid remediation fund and appropriating funds to increase an expenditure account in the opioid remediation fund.
Bill number 23-18 is continued to the meeting Monday, April 10th, 2023 for the second reading and consideration. Bill number 23-19, perhaps sponsored by Alderman Holman. Without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2319 is an ordinance accepting the bid of E. Meyer Contracting for the 2023 concrete slab replacement project and authorizing an agreement for same.
Bill number 23-19 is continued to the meeting Monday, April 10th, 2023 for the second reading and consideration. Couple of warrant lists here. Warrant list from 3/13/23 fax meeting in the amount of $232,849.46. I seek a motion and second to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is from the 3/27/23 regular meeting. The warrant list in the amount of $1,276,099.25. I seek a motion and second to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Other, I have none, and I know no one else does. I would seek a motion and second to approve for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Shout out for some of that.